In the vast, unforgiving expanse of the cosmos, where stars whispered secrets to those daring enough to listen, Kai found himself utterly alone, or so he thought. As a young engineer from Earth, barely out of his 20s, he'd signed up for this expedition on a whim, a chance to tinker with alien tech on a distant world called Elysara. A planet shrouded in perpetual twilight and veined with glowing crystal formations that hummed like forgotten melodies. The mission was simple: scout for rare minerals that could revolutionize human energy systems, but simplicity had a way of unraveling in the stars. Kai's ship had malfunctioned during descent, forcing an emergency landing in a remote valley far from the designated zone. His crewmates, scattered, their signals lost in the electromagnetic storms that raged across Elysara's surface. He'd set up camp in a hurry, pitching a high-tech tent that sealed against the planet's biting winds. Exhaustion claimed him quickly that first night, his body collapsing onto the inflatable bedroll, dreams filled with the hum of engines and the distant call of home. But dawn, or what passed for it on this world, brought something far beyond his wildest imaginings. Kai stirred, his eyelids fluttering open to the dim glow filtering through the tent's translucent fabric. A warmth pressed against his chest, soft and rhythmic like a living blanket. At first, he dismissed it as a hallucination from the planet's thin atmosphere. Then he felt it, a gentle vibration, almost like purring, resonating through his ribs. His heart skipped. Slowly, carefully, he looked down. There, curled against him, was a being of ethereal beauty. She had skin as pale as moonlight, shimmering faintly under the tent's light. Her hair cascaded like strands of silver silk, framing a face with high cheekbones and eyes that glowed a soft violet. Small, pointed ears peeked through her locks, delicate and elf-like, twitching slightly as if attuned to some invisible frequency. She wore a garment that seemed woven from stardust, flowing robes of iridescent fabric that clung to her curvaceous form in ways that were both regal and intoxicatingly sensual. A queen, perhaps. No, more than that. She exuded an aura of power. Yet here she was, nestled against a stranger from another world. Kai's breath caught in his throat. "What? Who are you?" he whispered, his voice hoarse from sleep and shock. Her eyes snapped open, those violet orbs locking onto his with an intensity that made his pulse race. She didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, a faint smile curved her lips, revealing teeth like polished pearls. The purring deepened, vibrating through them both, and Kai felt an inexplicable pull, a warmth spreading from her touch, not just physical, but emotional, like she was siphoning his very essence and giving something back in return. "I am Lyra," she murmured, her voice a melodic echo that seemed to resonate inside his mind as much as his ears. "Queen of Zerathia, guardian of the veiled realms?" Her accent was lilting, alien yet perfectly understandable, as if some hidden translator bridged their worlds. Kai blinked, his engineering brain kicking into overdrive. This couldn't be real. Hallucination. Toxin in the air, but her weight on him was tangible. Her scent, a mix of exotic flowers and ozone, filling the tent. He shifted slightly, and she adjusted with him, her body molding against his in a way that sent a jolt through his system. Not fear, exactly, something more primal, more curious. "How did you get in here?" he asked, trying to sit up without dislodging her. The tent seals were intact. No breaches showed on his scanner HUD. Lyra tilted her head, her pointed ears flicking. "Your dreams called to me, so vivid, so full of fire. In Zerathia, we sense emotions like colors in the void. Yours burned bright, drawing me from the shadows." She placed a hand on his chest, right over his heart, her fingers cool yet electrifying. "You are human. I have heard tales of your kind, fierce wanderers who bend the stars to their will." Kai's mind reeled. Zerathia. He'd studied galactic maps. No such place registered in human databases. But Elysara was uncharted. A frontier world teeming with unknowns, and here was one, literally in his arms. He should have been terrified. Protocol screamed for him to activate defenses, signal for help. Instead, he found himself mesmerized, her gaze pulling him in like a black hole's event horizon. As the moment stretched, Lyra's expression shifted from curiosity to something deeper, more intimate. She leaned closer, her breath warm against his skin. "Tell me, human Kai, is it? Your thoughts whisper your name. Why do you venture alone into the unknown? What flames drive your heart?" He hesitated, then chuckled softly, the sound breaking the tension. "Adventure, I guess. Fixing things that break, building bridges between worlds. But this is new." His hand, almost of its own accord, brushed a strand of her white hair aside. It felt like silk spun from clouds. Lyra's purring intensified, her body pressing closer. In my realm, such fire is rare. My people are bound by logic, by the cold weave of destiny. But you feel everything so fiercely, it awakens something in me. Her violet eyes darkened, a hint of vulnerability flashing through. Stay with me a while, let me taste more of your essence. Kai's rational side protested. This was insane, potentially dangerous. But the pull was undeniable, a magnetic force drawing him toward her. As the tense fabric rustled in the wind outside, he realized his solitary night had transformed into something extraordinary. Little did he know, this embrace was merely the spark of a greater fire, one that would entwine their fates against forces lurking in the shadows of Elysara. The valley around them seemed to hold its breath, the crystal veins pulsing in rhythm with Lyra's purring. Kai decided to play along, at least for now. All right, Lyra, tell me about Zerathia. What brings a queen sneaking into a stranger's tent? She laughed, a sound like tinkling chimes. Sneaking? No, it was destiny's pull. Zerathia lies hidden in the folds of this world, a kingdom of light and shadow where emotions are currency, and bonds form in the blink of a star. But threats loom, dark entities from the void seek to unravel our weave. Her hand tightened on his shirt, a subtle plea in her touch. As they talked, the sun, or Elysara's equivalent, crept higher, casting ethereal glows through the tent. Kai shared stories of Earth, bustling cities, endless oceans, the unyielding spirit of humanity that had propelled them to the stars. Lyra listened raptly, her body relaxing against his, the initial shock giving way to a comfortable intimacy. He noticed details about her, the way her ears twitched at exciting parts, how her skin shimmered when she laughed, the graceful curve of her form beneath those elegant robes. Hours slipped by unnoticed. Kai rigged up a small heater, brewing synthetic coffee from his rations. Lyra sniffed it curiously, her nose wrinkling in delight. This, essence of your world, it burns like your emotions. She sipped tentatively, then purred louder, leaning into him again. But beneath the budding connection, unease stirred. Kai's comm device beeped intermittently, fragments of signals from his crew hinting at trouble, storms, anomalies, something hunting in the valleys. Lyra's eyes clouded when he mentioned it. The Devourers, she whispered. Ancient foes that feed on life force, they sense intrusions like yours. Kai felt a surge of protectiveness. Here he was, a mere engineer, facing cosmic horrors with an alien queen in his lap. Yet, humanity's grit kicked in. Then we'll face them together, he said firmly, his hand covering hers. As night fell once more, they ventured outside the tent. Elysara's sky bloomed with auroras, painting the landscape in vibrant hues. Lyra guided him to a nearby crystal outcrop, her hand in his feeling natural, electric. Touch it, she urged. Feel the pulse of my world. Kai placed his palm on the glowing surface. A rush of images flooded his mind, visions of Zerathia, a sprawling realm of floating citadels and luminous gardens, ruled by beings like Lyra. But shadows encroached, devouring edges of the vision. He pulled back, gasping, and she steadied him, her embrace grounding. You're stronger than you know, she murmured, her lips brushing his ear. Humans, you adapt, you fight with heart, it's intoxicating. Their eyes met under the auroras, a spark igniting. Kai leaned in, drawn by the mystery and allure, their lips meeting in a tentative kiss. It was like fireworks in zero-gravity soft, exploring, laced with the thrill of the unknown. Lyra's purring vibrated through him, amplifying every sensation. But the moment shattered. A distant rumble echoed through the valley, the ground trembling. Lyra tensed. They're coming, the Devourers have found us. Kai grabbed his toolkit, makeshift weapons at the ready. Then let's show them what a human and a queen can do. As shadows coalesced on the horizon, their unlikely alliance formed, born from a simple embrace in a lonely tent. The stars watched, silent witnesses to the beginning of a legend. The rumble in the valley grew louder, a guttural roar that seemed to claw at the edges of Kai's nerves. The auroras above flickered, as if Elysara itself sensed the encroaching darkness. Kai stood shoulder to shoulder with Lyra, her slender form radiating both elegance and resolve. Her violet eyes scanning the horizon where shadows writhed like living ink. Her hand lingered in his, a lifeline in the chaos. Her touch sending a pulse of warmth that steadied his racing heart. The kiss they'd shared moments ago still burned on his lips, a fleeting spark that had ignited something deeper, a connection that felt both reckless and inevitable. Stay close, Lyra whispered, her voice a silken thread laced with urgency. Her pointed ears twitched, catching frequencies Kai couldn't hear. The Devourers are drawn to life, to emotion, your fire. Kai, it's a beacon to them. Her fingers tightened around his, her skin cool yet electric, and he felt that strange purring vibration ripple through him again, stirring something primal in his chest. He nodded. Gripping the modified plasma cutter he'd scavenged from his toolkit, it wasn't much, a glorified welding tool, but in his hands, it was a weapon. Humanity's knack for improvisation had carried them across galaxies. Kai wasn't about to let it fail him now. "Let's give them a show," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Lyra's lips curved into a smile, half admiration, half mischief, and for a moment, the looming threat seemed secondary to the pull between them. They moved as one, retreating from the exposed crystal outcrop to the relative cover of a jagged rock formation nearby. The air grew heavy, charged with an ozone tang that made Kai's skin prickle. Lyra's robes shimmered as she crouched beside him, the fabric clinging to her curves in a way that drew his gaze despite the danger. She caught him looking, her eyes glinting with a knowing tease. "Focus, human," she murmured, but her tone was playful, her breath warm against his cheek as she leaned closer. "Or do you find me more perilous than the Devourers?" Kai chuckled, the sound rough with adrenaline. "Your trouble, all right, but the kind I don't mind." The words slipped out before he could stop them, and her purring deepened, a low hum that seemed to wrap around his senses, making the world feel smaller, more intimate, despite the chaos closing in. The shadows on the horizon solidified, taking form, hulking silhouettes with jagged limbs that moved in unnatural jerks, like marionettes cut loose from their strings. Their eyes, if you could call them that, glowed a sickly yellow, pulsing in time with the valley's crystal veins. Lyra's expression hardened, her playful demeanor giving way to a regal intensity. "They feed on essence," she explained, her voice low. "Life, emotion, memory. Zerathia has shielded itself from them for eons, but your arrival, it stirred the void." Kai's jaw tightened. "So I'm the bait." He glanced at her, half expecting an apology, but instead, she pressed closer, her body aligning with his in the cramped space behind the rock. Her scent, floral, otherworldly, intoxicating, filled his lungs, and he had to fight to keep his focus. "Not bait," she corrected, her lips brushing his ear, sending a shiver down his spine. "A spark. Your emotions burn brighter than anything in my world. They fear it as much as they crave it." Her hand slid up his arm, lingering on his bicep, her touch both comforting and electrifying. "And I find it irresistible." The air between them crackled, not just from the storm brewing outside but from something unspoken, a tension that made every glance feel like a dare. Kai's pulse hammered, his body hyper-aware of her closeness, the curve of her hip against his, the faint glow of her skin, the way her breath hitched when their eyes met. This wasn't just survival. This was something else, something that made his blood sing even as danger loomed. The Devourers advanced, their movements eerily silent despite their size. Kai counted at least 5, each towering twice his height, their forms shifting like liquid shadow. He adjusted his grip on the plasma cutter, its hum a small comfort. "Any tips on fighting these things?" he asked, forcing his voice to stay steady. Lyra's eyes narrowed, but her hand never left his arm. "They're drawn to fear, doubt, weakness, but your strength, your human defiance, it confuses them. Hold onto that fire." Kai. She leaned in, her lips grazing his jaw, a fleeting touch that sent heat flooding through him. "Let me feel it." Too, he turned to her, caught in the gravity of her gaze. The world seemed to slow, the approaching threat a distant hum compared to the intensity of her presence. "You're not making this easy," he said, his voice low, rough with want. Her smile was a challenge, her body shifting closer until their breaths mingled. "Then don't make it easy for me," she whispered, her fingers trailing down his chest, lingering just above his heart. The purring vibration intensified, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to sync with his heartbeat, drawing him into her orbit. For a moment, he forgot the Devourers, the mission, everything but the way her touch made him feel alive. Invincible. A sharp crack snapped him back to reality, a crystal shard exploding nearby as a Devourer's claw grazed it. Lyra pulled him down just in time, her body shielding his, her strength surprising for her delicate frame. "They're here," she hissed, her voice losing its teasing edge. "Stay with me, Kai, we fight as one." They sprang into action, moving through the rocky terrain with a synchronicity that felt almost instinctive. Lyra's movements were fluid, graceful, her robes flaring like wings as she darted between shadows. Guiding Kai with subtle gestures, he followed, his engineer's mind analyzing the terrain, calculating angles for his makeshift weapon. The plasma cutter flared to life, its blue arc slicing through the air as he aimed at the nearest devourer. The creature recoiled, its yellow eyes flaring as the beam struck its flank. a piercing wail echoed, not from pain but from something deeper, rage, perhaps, or hunger. Kai's heart pounded, but Lyra's presence beside him was a tether, her purring a constant hum that kept his fear at bay. Again, she urged, her voice sharp but encouraging, her hand brushing his back as she moved past. He fired again, the cutter's heat searing the air. The Devourer staggered, its form destabilizing, parts of it dissolving into wisps of shadow, but the others were closing in, their movements faster now, drawn to the chaos. Kai's breath came in sharp gasps, his body buzzing with adrenaline and something else, Lyra's energy, her essence, weaving through his senses like a drug. She fought beside him, not with weapons but with gestures that seemed to bend the air itself. Shimmering waves rippled from her hands, distorting the Devourer's forms, slowing them. "Your emotions fuel me," she called over the din, her voice breathless but fierce. "Keep burning, Kai." He didn't fully understand, but he felt it, the surge of defiance. The stubborn human will to survive, it poured out of him, and Lyra seemed to drink it in, her movements growing sharper, her eyes blazing brighter. Their connection was more than physical now, it was a feedback loop, each feeding the other's strength. One Devourer lunged, its claw grazing Kai's shoulder, tearing through his jacket. Pain flared, but Lyra was there, her body pressed against his, her hands glowing as she repelled the creature with a burst of light. "You're not alone," she whispered, her lips close to his, her breath warm and urgent. The contact sent a jolt through him, pain and desire blurring into one. They stumbled back, finding cover behind another outcrop. Kai's shoulder throbbed, but Lyra's touch, her fingers tracing the wound, cool and soothing, eased the sting. "You're hurt," she said, her voice soft but laced with worry. Her eyes searched his, and for a moment, the battle faded, the world narrowing to just them. "I'm fine," he said, his hand catching hers. "But we need a plan, these things aren't stopping." Her smile was fierce, almost predatory. "Then we burn brighter." She leaned in, her lips brushing his in a kiss that was both desperate and electric, a promise of more if they survived. The purring in her chest vibrated through him, igniting his resolve. As the Devourers closed in, their yellow eyes glowing like malevolent stars, Kai and Lyra prepared to make their stand. The night was far from over, and the fire between them was just beginning to blaze. The air crackled with tension as Kai and Lyra crouched behind the jagged outcrop, the Devourer's yellow eyes cutting through the twilight like vengeful comets. The valley pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, the crystal veins embedded in Elysara's soil throbbing in time with the creature's advance. Kai's shoulder stung where the claw had grazed him, but Lyra's fleeting kiss still burned hotter, a spark that refused to fade even as the shadows closed in. Her body pressed against his, her purring a steady hum that anchored him, weaving their energies into a singular force. The taste of her lips lingered, ozone and starlight, a flavor that made his blood sing with reckless courage. "Burn brighter," she'd said, and Kai felt it now, a fire kindling in his chest, fueled by defiance and something deeper, something that tethered him to this alien queen in ways he couldn't yet grasp. Her violet eyes, fierce and luminous, locked onto his, and for a moment, the world held its breath. "They're coming," she whispered, her voice a blade of urgency slicing through the haze of their connection. "We can't outrun them, Kai, we must strike." He nodded, his grip tightening on the plasma cutter, its faint hum a lifeline in the chaos. The tool wasn't designed for combat. But Kai had always believed in making do, humanity's oldest trick. He glanced at Lyra, her silvery hair catching the aurora's glow, her robes clinging to her form like liquid starshine. She was a vision of power and grace, yet her closeness, the way her fingers brushed his arm, felt achingly human. "What's the play?" he asked, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. Lyra's lips curved, a mix of resolve and mischief. "We draw them to the crystal nexus, the heart of Elysara's pulse. It amplifies emotion, energy. Your fire, my will together, we can turn their hunger against them." Her hand slid to his chest, resting over his heart, and the purring intensified, a vibration that seemed to sync their pulses. "But it's dangerous. Kai, the nexus will expose us, our strengths, our fears." He met her gaze, unflinching. "I'm not afraid, not with you." The words felt truer than he expected, a vow born in the heat of the moment. Her eyes softened, a flicker of something vulnerable passing through them, before she nodded. "Then follow me," she said, her voice low and commanding. She rose, her movements fluid, and Kai followed, their hands brushing as they darted through the rocky maze. The Devourer's wails echoed behind them, a discordant chorus that sent shivers down his spine. The creatures were faster now, their forms shifting, elongating, as if the planet's energy fed their hunger. Kai's shoulder throbbed, but Lyra's presence kept him moving, her energy a beacon in the dark. They reached the nexus, a towering spire of crystal that pulsed with a deep, resonant hum, its surface alive with veins of light that danced like trapped lightning. The air around it was thick, electric, pressing against Kai's skin like a living thing. Lyra stopped at its base, her hands glowing as she touched the crystal, her eyes half-closed in concentration. "This is it," she murmured. "The heart of my world, it will amplify us or break us." Kai didn't hesitate. He placed his hand beside hers, the crystal's warmth surging through him, a flood of sensations, Lyra's emotions, her strength, her ancient resolve mingling with his own stubborn will. It was overwhelming, intoxicating, like diving into a star. He gasped, and she steadied him, her body pressing close, her breath warm against his neck. "Feel it," she whispered. "Let it flow through you." The nexus hummed louder, its light flaring, and Kai felt his emotions: fear, courage, desire swell to impossible heights. Lyra's purring became a song, weaving through his mind, and he saw flashes of her world, Zerathia's floating citadels, its people bound by logic yet starving for passion. He saw her, too, alone, burdened by duty, drawn to him by a fire she'd never known. The connection was raw, unguarded, and it made his heart ache with a longing he couldn't name. But the moment shattered. The Devourers burst into the clearing, their forms more monstrous now, limbs like twisted thorns, eyes blazing with ravenous light. They didn't charge blindly, they circled, deliberate, sensing the Nexus's power. Kai's plasma cutter flared as he stepped forward, shielding Lyra instinctively. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice carrying a defiance that echoed through the crystal. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him close. "Together," she said, her voice fierce, her hands glowed brighter, and she channeled the Nexus's energy, sending arcs of light toward the Devourers. The creatures recoiled, shrieking, but didn't retreat. Kai fired the cutter, its blue beam slicing through one's limb, reducing it to ash. The victory was fleeting. Another lunged, its claw narrowly missing his chest as Lyra yanked him aside, her strength surprising. "They're learning," she gasped, her body pressed against his as they dodged another attack. "Your fire confuses them, but they adapt." Her eyes searched his, urgent, desperate. "We need more. Kai, give me everything." He didn't know what she meant, not fully, but he felt it, a surge of raw emotion, his human tenacity amplified by the Nexus. He grabbed her hand, pulling her close, their foreheads touching. "Take it," he said, his voice rough with conviction. "Whatever you need, it's yours." The Nexus roared, its light blinding, and Kai felt Lyra's essence merge with his, a torrent of passion and power that made his skin burn. Her purring became a cry, and she unleashed a wave of energy that staggered the Devourers, their forms fracturing like glass, but one broke through, its claw aimed at Lyra. Kai acted on instinct, diving in front of her, the plasma cutter roaring as he severed the creature's limb. Pain exploded in his side as another claw grazed him, blood seeping through his torn jacket. Lyra's scream cut through the chaos. She caught him as he stumbled, her arms strong, her eyes blazing with fury and fear. "No," she cried, her voice a command to the universe itself. The Nexus pulsed, amplifying her rage, and she unleashed a blast that sent the remaining Devourers reeling, their forms dissolving into the air. Kai slumped against her, his vision swimming, but her touch grounded him. She cradled his face, her fingers trembling. "You foolish, brave human," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why did you do that?" He managed a weak grin, blood staining his lips. "Couldn't let them ruin your glow." His words were light, but his eyes held hers, raw and unguarded. The Nexus's light dimmed, the immediate threat gone, but the air still crackled with its power and something else. Lyra's expression shifted, a storm of emotions flickering across her face. She leaned in, her lips brushing his in a kiss that was both desperate and reverent, her purring vibrating through them both. It was deeper than before, a promise and a plea. Her body trembling against his. "You're more than I expected," she murmured, her voice thick with something unspoken. "But this isn't over." Kai's head spun, not just from the wound but from the intensity of her gaze. He forced himself to stand, leaning on her, the Nexus still humming softly behind them. "What's next?" he asked, his voice hoarse but determined. Her eyes darkened, a shadow passing through them. The Devourers were only scouts. Something larger drives them, a force that threatens Zerathia itself. She touched his wound, her fingers glowing as they slowed the bleeding, her touch both soothing and electrifying. "You've bound yourself to this fight." "Kai, to me?" He nodded, his hand covering hers, their connection a lifeline in the chaos. The valley was quiet now, but the auroras above flickered ominously, as if warning of greater dangers. Kai felt the weight of it all, the fight, the bond, the unknown, but with Lyra beside him, he felt invincible. As they stood together, the nexuses glow casting their shadows long across the ground. A new sound echoed in the distance, not a wail, but a deep, resonant hum, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient. Lyra tensed, her grip tightening. "It's coming," she whispered, her voice laced with dread and resolve. Kai's heart pounded, but he met her gaze, his fire undimmed. "Then we face it together." The resonant hum from the distance grew louder, a deep thrum that seemed to vibrate through the crystal-studded valley, stirring the air with an electric unease. Kai leaned against Lyra, his side aching where the Devourer's claw had grazed him, but her glowing touch kept the pain at bay, her fingers weaving a faint warmth that stitched his wound with an alien precision. Her violet eyes, wide with a mix of dread and determination, scanned the horizon where the auroras flickered like warning signals. Their shadows stretched long across the nexus's glowing surface, intertwined as if the planet itself acknowledged their bond. Kai's heart pounded, not just from the approaching threat, but from the weight of Lyra's words, "You've bound yourself to this fight. To me." He tightened his grip on her hand, feeling the steady pulse of her purring, a rhythm that grounded him even as the unknown loomed. "So, what's this something larger we're up against?" he asked, his voice rough but laced with a stubborn spark. "Because I'm guessing it's not just more of those shadow freaks." Lyra's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through her tension. "You just even now, human." She stepped closer, her body brushing against his, her scent floral and electric filling his senses. "The Devourers are but echoes of a greater will, the Voidheart, we call it, a force that hungers for all life, all emotion. It's personal to me." Her voice faltered, a rare crack in her regal facade, and Kai felt a surge of protectiveness. "Personal how?" he pressed, his engineer's mind itching for details even as his body registered the warmth of her proximity. Her robes shimmered, clinging to her curves in a way that made it hard to focus, especially when her pointed ears twitched with every distant rumble. She hesitated, then leaned in, her breath warm against his cheek. "Later, Kai, for now, we must move. The nexus is too exposed." Her hand slid down his arm, guiding him away from the glowing spire. But as they turned, a sharp crack split the air, a crystal shard dislodging from the ground, tumbling toward them. Kai yanked Lyra back, his wounded side screaming in protest, and they stumbled into a shallow crevice, landing in a tangled heap. For a moment, they were a mess of limbs and fabric, her silvery hair spilling across his chest, her body pressed so close he could feel every curve through her gossamer robes. His face flushed, and he tried to shift without making it obvious he was hyper-aware of her. You okay?" he muttered, his voice catching as her purring vibrated against him, sending a jolt through his already frayed nerves. Lyra propped herself up, her face inches from his, her violet eyes glinting with amusement. "You're blushing. Kai, is this how humans face danger, by turning red?" Her teasing tone was a stark contrast to the chaos around them, and she didn't move, her body still draped over his, one hand braced on his chest. He coughed, trying to laugh it off. "Yeah, well, getting crushed by a crystal wasn't on my to-do list. Neither was this." He gestured vaguely at their tangled position, his hand accidentally brushing her hip. The contact sent a spark through him, and her purring deepened, her lips parting slightly as if she felt it too. "Focus, human," she murmured, echoing her earlier words, but her voice was huskier now, her gaze lingering on his mouth. "Or I might think you prefer this to fighting." She shifted, deliberately slow, her thigh sliding against his as she disentangled herself, leaving him dazed and scrambling to sit up. "Okay, that's not fair," he said, his grin lopsided as he adjusted his torn jacket. "You're the one making this distracting." He stood, offering her a hand, and she took it, her touch lingering longer than necessary. The air between them crackled, a mix of danger and desire that made every moment feel like a tightrope walk. The hum grew louder, now a bone-rattling pulse that shook pebbles loose from the crevice walls. Lyra's teasing faded, her ears twitching as she pulled Kai toward a narrow path leading deeper into the valley. "The Voidheart's presence stirs the planet," she said, her voice urgent. "We need shelter somewhere to plan. There's a Zerathian outpost nearby, hidden in the cliffs." They moved quickly, Kai's plasma cutter still clutched in one hand, his other arm around Lyra's waist for support, or maybe just because he couldn't help it. The path wound through glowing crystal formations, their light casting eerie shadows that danced like specters. Every step heightened the drama, the air thick with anticipation, as if Elysara itself was holding its breath. They reached the outpost, a sleek, dome-like structure half-carved into the cliff, its surface etched with runes that pulsed faintly. Lyra pressed her palm to a panel, and it slid open, revealing a chamber lit by soft, bioluminescent orbs. The interior was both alien and intimate, with curved walls and a central platform that looked suspiciously like a bed, draped in shimmering fabrics. Kai raised an eyebrow. "This your idea of a safe house, or a date spot?" Lyra laughed, a sound like wind chimes, but her eyes were serious. "Zerathians value connection. Kai, this place, it's for bonding, for strengthening our essence." She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his jaw, her touch sending a shiver through him. "But it's also fortified. We're safe for now." He swallowed, trying to ignore the way her closeness made his pulse race. "Right, safe, so, about this Voidheart." He trailed off as she guided him to the platform, sitting him down with a gentle push. The fabric was soft, almost too inviting, and he felt acutely aware of the bloodstains on his jacket, the dirt on his hands. "I'm a mess," he muttered, half joking. "You're alive," she countered, kneeling in front of him, her hands glowing as she inspected his wound. "And that's more than most would be." Her touch was clinical yet tender, her fingers tracing the gash with care. The pain eased, but the intimacy of the moment, her face so close, her breath warm, made his head spin. "Okay, Lyra," he said, his voice low. "You gotta stop doing that, or I'm gonna forget we're being hunted." He meant it as a joke, but the way her eyes darkened, her purring intensifying, told him she wasn't playing. "Then forget, just for a moment," she whispered, leaning in until their lips were a breath apart. The air was charged, the hum of the outpost blending with her vibration, and Kai felt himself teetering on the edge of something reckless. But before he could close the distance, a loud clang echoed from the entrance, followed by a low, guttural growl. They sprang apart, Kai grabbing his plasma cutter as Lyra's hands flared with light. The door held, but the runes pulsed erratically, as if straining against an unseen force. "They found us," she hissed, her playful demeanor gone. "The Voidheart scouts are persistent." Kai's heart raced, but he flashed a grin, trying to lighten the mood. "Great, I was just getting comfy. Any chance they'll knock first?" His humor hid the tension coiling in his gut, but Lyra's answering smile was fierce, her hand finding his. "They don't knock," she said, pulling him to his feet, "but we'll greet them properly." She led him to a console embedded in the wall, her fingers dancing over glowing controls. A holographic map sprang up, showing the valley and a swarm of Devourers converging on their position. Kai's stomach dropped. That's a lot of uninvited guests. He glanced at her, their earlier moments still lingering in the air. "Any tricks up those fancy sleeves?" Lyra's eyes gleamed with a mix of defiance and mischief. "Oh, Kai, you have no idea." She activated a sequence, and the outpost hummed, its walls glowing brighter. "This place is more than a refuge, it's a weapon. But it needs us, our connection, to work." He blinked, caught off guard. "Our connection, like what, our vibes?" His awkward attempt at humor made her laugh, but her grip on his hand tightened. "Exactly," she said, her voice dropping to a sultry whisper. "Your fire, my will, together, we can amplify this outpost's defenses." She stepped closer, her body brushing his, her purring a siren's call. "But it means opening yourself to me." "Kai, completely." The implication hung heavy, thrilling and terrifying, as the Devourers' growls grew louder, the outpost trembling under their assault. Kai realized this wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a test of trust, of something deeper. He met her gaze, his resolve hardening. "Then let's light this place up." The outpost's walls pulsed with a rhythmic glow, the runes etched into them flaring in time with the deep, ominous growls of the Devourers clawing at the entrance. Kai stood beside Lyra, her hand still gripping his, her purring a steady vibration that thrummed through his veins, igniting a fire that battled the fear coiling in his gut. Her words echoed in his mind, "Open yourself to me." "Kai, completely." The holographic map flickered, showing the swarm of shadowy creatures tightening their circle around the outpost, their yellow eyes like malevolent stars in the twilight. Yet, in this moment, the danger felt distant compared to the electric charge between them, a current that made the air feel alive, heavy with possibility. Lyra's violet eyes locked onto his, her gaze both a challenge and an invitation. "The outpost's defenses draw on our bond," she said, her voice low, almost a caress. "Your human passion, my Zerathian essence, they intertwine here, amplifying the crystal core." She stepped closer, her body brushing his, the shimmering fabric of her robes catching the light in a way that highlighted every curve. "But it requires intimacy, a merging of our energies." Kai's breath hitched, his pulse racing as her words sank in. "Intimacy." He repeated, his voice rough, a mix of curiosity and nervous anticipation. He was no stranger to high-stakes missions, but this was uncharted territory. Her purring deepened, a sensual hum that seemed to wrap around his senses, pulling him closer despite the chaos outside. She nodded, her lips curving into a smile that was both regal and teasing. Not just physical. Kai, though, her eyes trailed over him, lingering on his torn jacket, the bloodstains on his shirt, the way his chest rose and fell with each breath. That's part of it. Zerathians connect through emotion, through touch. Your fire, it's like nothing I've known. Let me feel it. The outpost trembled, a low rumble signaling the Devourers' relentless assault, but Lyra's presence made the threat feel like a distant storm. She guided him to the central platform, the one draped in shimmering fabrics that looked far too much like a bed. Kai's mind raced, part of him screamed to focus on the fight, to rig a trap or rewire the outpost's defenses with his engineering skills. But another part, the one stirred by her touch, her scent, her purring, urged him to trust her, to dive into this alien ritual that felt both dangerous and exhilarating. He sat on the platform, the fabric soft under his hands, and Lyra knelt before him, her movements graceful yet deliberate. "This place is a conduit," she murmured, her fingers brushing his jaw, trailing down to his chest. Her touch was cool, electric, sending shivers through him that had nothing to do with the cold. "When we connect, we strengthen the outpost, we become its power." Kai swallowed, his body hyper-aware of her closeness, the way her silvery hair cascaded over her shoulders, the faint glow of her skin, the way her robes shifted, revealing glimpses of her form that made his throat dry. "So, what, we just hold hands and think happy thoughts?" he asked, his attempt at humor shaky as her fingers lingered, tracing the edge of his wound, now nearly healed by her earlier touch. Her laugh was soft, a chime that cut through the tension. "Oh, Kai, you're adorable when you're nervous." She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear, her breath warm and teasing. "It's more than that, let me show you." Before he could respond, she closed the distance, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was slow, deliberate, and searing. It wasn't like their earlier kisses, those had been sparks, fleeting and desperate. This was a fire, deep and consuming, her purring vibrating through him, amplifying every sensation. His hands found her waist, instinctively pulling her closer, and she melted against him, her body fitting perfectly as if they were two pieces of a cosmic puzzle. The outpost's hum intensified, the runes glowing brighter, as if responding to their connection. Lyra's hands roamed, slipping under his torn jacket, her fingers exploring the planes of his chest with a curiosity that felt both reverent and hungry. Kai's breath caught as she tugged the fabric aside, her touch igniting sparks across his skin. "Your heart," she whispered, her lips trailing to his jaw, then his neck, each kiss a pulse of warmth that made his head spin. "It's so strong, so alive." He groaned softly, his hand sliding up her back, feeling the smooth curve of her spine through the thin, iridescent fabric. "Lyra," he managed, his voice thick. "This is intense." He wasn't sure if he meant the ritual, her touch, or the way the outpost's energy seemed to flow through them, amplifying every sensation. Air shimmered, charged with their combined essence, and he felt her emotions, her longing, her strength merging with his own, a heady mix that made him feel invincible. She pulled back slightly, her eyes half-lidded, glowing with an intensity that made his heart stutter. "This is how we fight, Kai," she said, her voice a sultry whisper. "This is how we survive." She guided his hands to the clasps of her robes, her movements slow, deliberate, giving him time to pull back if he wanted. But he didn't. The fabric parted, revealing more of her luminous skin, her form both alien and breathtakingly human in its allure. The sight sent a rush of heat through him, but he kept his touch gentle, respectful, even as desire threatened to overwhelm him. The platform seemed to pulse beneath them, the outpost's core resonating with their closeness. Lyra straddled his lap, her movements fluid, her purring a constant hum that vibrated through them both. "Feel me," she urged, her hands guiding his to her waist, her skin cool yet warm under his touch. "Let go of fear, of doubt, give me your fire." Kai's hands tightened, his breath ragged as he leaned into her, their lips meeting again in a kiss that was both tender and urgent. The world narrowed to just them, the hum of the outpost, the glow of the runes, the rhythm of her purring blending with his heartbeat. Their connection deepened, not just physical but emotional, a merging of human passion and Zerathian essence that felt like touching a star. Her touch was everywhere soft, exploring, igniting, yet never crossed into anything that felt crude or rushed. It was a dance, intimate and powerful, each movement amplifying the energy around them. The outpost's walls flared, the runes blazing as if fueled by their bond. Kai felt it, a surge of power, not just from the crystal core but from within, his defiance, his will, his humanity pouring into Lyra. She gasped, her head tilting back, her silvery hair spilling like a cascade of light. "Yes," she breathed, her voice trembling with awe. "This is what we need." But the moment wasn't without its risks. The Devourers' growls grew louder, the door rattling as their claws scraped against it. The outpost's defenses held, but Kai could feel the strain, the way the energy flickered with each assault. Lyra's eyes met his, a flicker of worry breaking through her passion. "They sense us," she said, her voice breathless but firm. "Our bond draws them, but it also strengthens us." Kai nodded, his hands still on her, his body buzzing with the intensity of their connection. "Then let's make it count," he said, his voice low, resolute. He pulled her closer, their foreheads touching, their breaths mingling. The outpost hummed louder, its energy peaking, and Kai felt a rush of power unlike anything he'd known, a fusion of their essences. A weapon born of trust and desire, as they held each other, the platform glowing beneath them. The runes reached a blinding crescendo, a shockwave pulsed outward, the outpost trembling as the Devourers' wails turned to shrieks of pain. Kai and Lyra clung to each other, their bond a beacon in the chaos, their intimacy a shield against the dark, but even as the immediate threat recoiled. Kai knew this was only a reprieve. The Voidheart, whatever it was still out there, and their connection, thrilling, dangerous, undeniable, was now its target. He looked into Lyra's eyes, her face flushed with the afterglow of their ritual, and managed a grin. Well, that was one hell of a team-building exercise. She laughed, a sound that warmed the cold air, and leaned into him, her purring softer now, intimate. "You have no idea what you've started, Kai." Lyra's laughter lingered in the air, a soft chime that wove through the outpost's glowing hum, her body still close to Kai's, their breaths sinking in the aftermath of their electrifying connection. The platform beneath them pulsed faintly, its shimmering fabrics warm from their shared energy, the runes on the walls glowing steadily now, as if the outpost itself had drawn strength from their bond. The Devourers' shrieks had faded, their assault repelled by the shockwave born of Kai and Lyra's intimate ritual. But the silence that followed felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken truths. Kai's grin lingered, his heart still racing from the intensity of their closeness. But Lyra's words, "You have no idea what you've started," hung between them, teasing a deeper mystery. He brushed a strand of her silvery hair from her face, his fingers lingering on her luminous skin, the contact grounding him amidst the alien strangeness. "So, what have I started?" he asked, his voice light but edged with curiosity. Her violet eyes met his, sparkling with a mix of amusement and something darker, something that made his pulse quicken anew. The purring in her chest softened, but its rhythm still thrummed through him, a reminder of the bond they'd forged, a bond that felt both exhilarating and perilous. Lyra leaned back slightly, her robes shifting to reveal the elegant curve of her shoulder, her gaze never leaving his. "You've awakened the outpost, Kai," she said, her voice low, almost reverent. "And in doing so, you've stirred the Voidheart's attention. It doesn't just hunt, it knows." She paused, her pointed ears twitching as if catching a distant sound, her expression tightening. "But there's more, something I haven't told you." Kai's grin faded, his engineer's mind snapping to attention. "More." He shifted on the platform, his hand still resting on her waist, the intimacy of their earlier moment blending seamlessly with the tension now creeping into the air. "Lyra, if there's a bigger bad guy out there, now's the time to spill." She rose, her movements fluid, and pulled him to his feet, her touch both commanding and gentle. The outpost's bioluminescent orbs cast soft shadows across her face, highlighting the vulnerability beneath her regal poise. "Come," she said, guiding him to the holographic console. Her fingers danced over the controls, summoning a new image, a sprawling network of crystal veins stretching across Elysara, converging on a dark, pulsating core deep beneath the planet's surface. "This is the Voidheart's anchor. It's not just a force, it's alive, sentient, and it's tied to me." Kai's stomach twisted, the weight of her words sinking in. "Tied to you? How?" He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers on the console. The contact a quiet anchor as the outpost trembled faintly, the distant hum of the planet growing louder. Lyra's gaze dropped, her voice barely above a whisper. "Centuries ago, Zerathia made a pact to survive. My people were dying, our emotions fading, our essence weakening. The Voidheart offered power, life in exchange for bond. A piece of it lives in me, Kai, in every Zerathian queen." She touched her chest, her fingers trembling. "It's why I felt your fire so strongly. It's why I came to you in the tent. The Voidheart sensed you through me, and now it wants you." The revelation hit Kai like a shockwave, his mind reeling. "Wait, you're saying you're part of this thing?" His voice rose, not in anger but in disbelief, his hand tightening on hers. "Lyra, why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes flashed, a mix of guilt and defiance. "Because I didn't know it would come to this." She stepped closer, her body inches from his, her purring a desperate hum now. "Your emotions, your humanity, they're breaking the bond I have with it. When we connected, she trailed off, her cheeks flushing a faint silver, the memory of their intimacy hanging between them. "It woke something in me, something stronger than the Voidheart's hold, but it also enraged it." Kai's head spun, the pieces falling into place, the Devourers' relentless pursuit, the way Lyra's touch amplified his emotions, the outpost's response to their bond. He should have been angry, betrayed even, but the way she looked at him, raw, vulnerable, her violet eyes pleading for understanding, made his heart ache instead. "So, what? I'm some kind of cosmic threat to this thing?" he asked, his voice softening, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Guess I'm flattered." Lyra's laugh was shaky, but it broke the tension, her hand squeezing his. "You're impossible," she said, her tone warm despite the fear in her eyes. "But yes, your fire, your defiance, it's unraveling the Voidheart's grip on me, on Zerathia, and it will do anything to stop you." Before Kai could respond, the outpost shuddered violently, the runes flickering as a deep, resonant voice echoed, not from outside, but from within the walls, within their minds. "You cannot break what was forged in eternity." The words were cold, slithering, and Kai felt a chill crawl up his spine. Lyra gasped, clutching his arm, her purring stuttering as if the voice had struck her physically. "What the hell was that?" Kai demanded, his plasma cutter raised instinctively, though there was nothing to aim at. The holographic map flickered, the dark core pulsing faster, its tendrils reaching toward the outpost's location. "The Voidheart," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "It's speaking through me, through the nexus." She turned to him, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "It knows we're here. Kai, it knows what we've done." The air grew thick, the outpost's glow dimming as shadows seeped through the walls, not Devourers, but something formless, like liquid darkness, pooling at the edges of the chamber. Kai pulled Lyra behind him, his heart pounding, but she stepped forward, her hands glowing as she faced the encroaching void. "You will not have him," she shouted, her voice a defiant song, her purring rising to a fierce crescendo. The shadows recoiled, but the voice returned. Colder now, laced with malice. "He is nothing, a fleeting spark, but you, Lyra, you are mine." The words seemed to pull at her, her body trembling as if an invisible force tugged at her essence. Kai caught her as she stumbled, his arms wrapping around her, their connection a shield against the darkness. "Lyra, stay with me," he said, his voice fierce, his hands cupping her face, her eyes fluttered, the violet dimming, but his touch seemed to anchor her, her purring stabilizing. "You're not, it's you're with me." Her gaze cleared, a spark of defiance returning. "Yes," she breathed, her hands gripping his shoulders. "With you." She kissed him, hard and desperate, as if pouring all her strength into the act, and the outpost flared back to life, the runes blazing, pushing the shadows back. But the twist wasn't over. The holographic map shifted, revealing a new image, a figure. Humanoid yet alien, cloaked in darkness. Standing at the heart of the Voidheart's core, it wasn't just a force. It was a being, ancient and cunning, and its eyes, glowing the same yellow as the Devourers, locked onto Kai through the hologram, as if seeing him across the planet. "You will burn, human," it hissed, and the map exploded in a shower of sparks, the console shorting out. Kai and Lyra stumbled back, the outpost shaking as the shadows surged again, stronger now. "Okay, that's new," Kai said, his voice steady despite the chaos, his arm around Lyra's waist. "Any ideas on fighting a sentient cosmic monster?" Lyra's smile was fierce, her purring a battle cry. "We break its hold together." She pulled him toward the platform, the heart of the outpost, her hands glowing as she prepared to channel their bond again. "But this time, Kai, we go deeper, we face it on its own ground." As the shadows closed in, the outpost's core pulsing with their combined energy, Kai realized the fight had just taken a turn he never could have predicted. The Voidheart wasn't just after Lyra, it wanted him, too, and their bond was the key to either victory or destruction. The outpost's core pulsed with a fierce, radiant glow, its runes flaring as if straining to hold back the encroaching shadows that slithered like living ink across the walls. Kai's arm tightened around Lyra's waist, her body pressed close, her purring a defiant hum that vibrated through him. anchoring him against the Voidheart's chilling presence. The holographic console lay in ruins, sparks still fizzling from its shattered frame. The image of the dark, sentient figure burned into Kai's mind, those yellow eyes, ancient and malevolent, promising destruction. Lyra's words echoed in the charged air. We face it on its own ground. The stakes had never been higher, and yet, amidst the cosmic dread, Kai felt the spark of their bond burning brighter, a reckless fire that made him feel alive, even on the edge of oblivion. Lyra pulled him toward the platform at the outpost's heart, her hands glowing with an ethereal light, her silvery hair catching the glow like a halo. The Voidheart's power is rooted in the planet's core, she said, her voice steady but urgent, her violet eyes locking onto his. We can reach it through the nexus, channel our bond to confront it directly, but Kai, she hesitated, her fingers brushing his chest, lingering over his heart. It will test us, everything we are. Kai's pulse raced, not just from the threat but from her touch. The way her closeness made the air feel electric. Test us how? He asked, his voice rough, trying to focus despite the warmth of her body against his. The outpost trembled, a low growl from the shadows reminding them of the danger. But Lyra's presence was a distraction he couldn't shake, her scent, floral and otherworldly. Her curves barely concealed by her shimmering robes. She stepped closer, her lips inches from his, her purring intensifying. It will dig into our fears, our desires, it will try to break us apart. Her hand slid up his arm, her touch both soothing and electrifying, and Kai felt that familiar pull, a mix of desire and trust that made his head spin. But our bond, it's stronger than it expects. We just need to stay connected. He raised an eyebrow, a grin tugging at his lips despite the tension. Connected? Huh, you mean like back there? He nodded toward the platform, where their earlier intimacy had powered the outpost's defenses. Because I'm starting to think you just like getting me into awkward situations. Lyra's laugh was a bright chime, cutting through the oppressive air. You're not wrong, she teased, her eyes glinting with mischief. But this time, it's not just about us. It's about Zerathia and you, Kai, you're the key. She pressed her palm to his chest, her purring syncing with his heartbeat, and the outpost's core flared brighter, as if responding to their closeness. Before he could respond, the platform shuddered, and a low, resonant voice, the Voidheart, slithered through their minds again. You cannot defy eternity. Your bond is fragile. Human, breakable, the shadows surged, tendrils lashing out, aiming to separate them. Kai instinctively pulled Lyra behind him, his plasma cutter raised, its blue arc hissing in the dim light. Fragile, my ass, he muttered, firing a beam at the nearest tendril. It dissolved in a burst of ash, but more took its place, writhing like snakes. Lyra's hands glowed, sending waves of light that pushed the shadows back, but the effort made her sway, her breath catching. Kai caught her, his arm around her waist, and the contact sent a jolt through them both, their bond flaring like a beacon. Stay with me, he said, his voice firm, though his heart pounded at how close she'd come to falling. Her eyes met his, wide and vulnerable, and for a moment, the chaos faded, the world narrowing to just them. You okay? She nodded, her hand gripping his shoulder, her purring a steady hum. I'm fine, but this. She gestured at the shadows, the trembling outpost. It's draining me. We need to reach the core now, before it overwhelms us. She pulled him onto the platform, her movements urgent but graceful, and Kai followed, his mind racing with the absurdity of it all, an engineer from Earth, fighting a cosmic entity with an alien queen who made his blood sing. The platform glowed brighter as they sat, their bodies close, the fabric warm beneath them. Lyra guided his hands to her waist, her eyes intense. Focus on me, she said, her voice a sultry command. Let our bond flow into the nexus. It's our only chance. Kai swallowed, his hands tightening on her, hyper-aware of every point of contact, the curve of her hips, the softness of her skin through her robes, the way her purring seemed to vibrate through his very bones. This is the worst timing for a heart-to-heart, he quipped, trying to lighten the mood as the shadows pressed closer, their growls a low, menacing hum. Couldn't we, send it a strongly worded email instead? Lyra's laugh was breathy, her lips brushing his jaw, sending a shiver down his spine. You're ridiculous, she murmured, but her tone was fond, her hands sliding up his chest, tugging at his torn jacket. But I like it. Now, focus, or I'll make this even more awkward for you. He grinned, despite the danger, and leaned into her, their foreheads touching. Challenge accepted. Their lips met, a kiss that was both desperate and grounding, a surge of emotion that poured into the nexus. The platform flared, its light pushing back the shadows, but the Voidheart's voice returned. Sharper now, cutting through their connection. "You think love can defy me? You are nothing." The words stung, but Lyra's purring drowned them out, her body pressing closer, her hands roaming with a mix of urgency and tenderness. The outpost's core pulsed in time with their bond, amplifying their emotions, Kai's defiance, Lyra's resolve, their shared fire. But as the light grew, so did the shadows, coalescing into a single, towering form at the edge of the platform, a humanoid silhouette with yellow eyes, the same figure from the hologram, now terrifyingly real. Kai broke the kiss, his breath ragged, his hand grabbing the plasma cutter. "Okay, that's not awkward, that's just rude," he said, his voice laced with bravado as he aimed at the figure. Lyra stood beside him, her hands glowing, her purring a fierce battle cry. "It's a projection," she said, her voice steady despite the strain. "The Voidheart's trying to scare us. We need to reach the core now." She pulled him toward a panel on the platform, her fingers flying over glowing runes. A hatch opened, revealing a shimmering tunnel descending into the planet, a direct path to the Voidheart's anchor. Kai hesitated, the tunnel's light almost blinding, the shadows still clawing at the edges of the platform. "You sure about this? Looks like a one-way ticket to Creepsville." Lyra grabbed his hand, her eyes blazing. "With you, I'm sure of anything." Her words were a lifeline, and despite the absurdity of diving into a planet's core with a cosmic queen, Kai felt a surge of courage. He squeezed her hand, their bond a steady pulse against the Voidheart's taunts. As they stepped into the tunnel, the shadows lunged, but the Nexus's light held them back, powered by their connection. The tunnel enveloped them, its walls alive with crystal veins, pulsing in time with Lyra's purring. Kai's heart raced, not just from the danger but from the woman beside him, her touch a promise that they'd face this together. "Ready for the worst date ever?" he asked, his grin shaky but genuine as they descended into the unknown. Lyra's laugh echoed in the tunnel, her hand tightening on his. "With you, Kai, it's the best." The shadows roared behind them, but their bond burned brighter, a fire that refused to be extinguished, even as they plunged toward the heart of the Voidheart. The tunnel's shimmering walls pulsed around Kai and Lyra, the crystal veins glowing with a rhythm that mirrored her purring. A steady hum that thrummed through their clasped hands as they descended deeper into Elysara's core. The air was thick with energy, electric and alive, the planet itself seeming to breathe with them. Kai's heart pounded, his grin from moments ago, the worst date ever, still lingering. But the weight of their mission pressed harder now. The Voidheart's anchor lay ahead, a sentient force that had haunted Lyra's people for centuries, and their bond, forged in fire and intimacy, was their only weapon against it. Her words echoed in his mind, her laugh a beacon in the dark. "With you, Kai, it's the best." The shadows roared behind them, but the tunnel's light held, fueled by their connection, a defiant flame against the encroaching void. Lyra's hand tightened in his, her silvery hair catching the crystal's glow, her violet eyes fierce with resolve. "We're close," she whispered, her voice steady despite the faint tremble in her fingers. "The Voidheart's core is just beyond. It will try to tear us apart. Kai, don't let it." Her purring deepened, a vibration that wove through his senses, grounding him even as the tunnel seemed to constrict, the walls pulsing faster, as if Elysara itself sensed the battle ahead. Kai squeezed her hand, his engineer's mind racing but his heart steady. "Not letting go," he said, his voice firm, a promise that felt heavier than the plasma cutter still tucked in his belt. Her smile, fleeting but radiant, was a spark that made the darkness bearable. They moved forward, their steps synchronized, the tunnel opening into a vast chamber where the crystal veins converged into a massive, pulsating core, a heart of light and shadow, its surface writhing with tendrils of darkness that seemed to watch them. The Voidheart's presence hit them like a wave, a cold, slithering voice filling their minds. "You come to challenge me. Human, you, a fleeting spark, and she, my tethered queen." The core pulsed, its light dimming as the shadows thickened, forming a towering figure, the same humanoid silhouette from the outpost, its yellow eyes blazing with ancient malice. "You cannot break what binds her. She is mine." Lyra flinched, her purring stuttering, but Kai stepped in front of her, his defiance flaring. "She's not yours," he snapped, his voice echoing in the chamber. "And I'm not just a spark." He felt Lyra's hand on his back, her touch reigniting their bond, and the core's light flickered, as if responding to their resolve. The Voidheart laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Foolish, your bond is weak, your emotions fleeting." The shadows surged, tendrils lashing out, aiming to separate them. Kai swung his plasma cutter, its blue arc slicing through one, but more took its place, wrapping around his legs, pulling him away from Lyra. She cried out, her hands glowing as she sent waves of light to repel the shadows. But the Voidheart's voice grew louder, burrowing into their minds. She will always return to me. Kai's vision blurred, pain shooting through him as the tendrils tightened. But Lyra's purring cut through the chaos. A lifeline? Kai, she shouted, diving toward him, her body colliding with his as she broke the tendrils' grip. They fell together, rolling across the chamber's crystal floor, her arms around him, her breath warm against his neck. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice desperate, her eyes locking onto his. Nodded, his hand finding hers, their fingers intertwining. "Always," he said, and the core flared, their bond pushing back the shadows, but the Voidheart wasn't done. The figure stepped forward, its form solidifying, towering over them. "You think love can defy eternity?" It hissed, raising a clawed hand, energy crackling around it. Lyra stood, pulling Kai with her, her purring a fierce song now. "It's not just love," she said, her voice ringing with defiance. "It's us, together." She pressed her palm to the core, her other hand gripping Kai's, and he followed, his hand joining hers on the crystal surface. The connection was immediate, overwhelming, a flood of emotions. His human fire blending with her Zerathian essence, pouring into the core. The chamber shook, the core's light surging, blinding. Kai felt Lyra's memories, centuries of duty, of loneliness, of the Voidheart's hold on her people, and his own life flashed through him, earth skies, his relentless drive to fix the unfixable. The moment he woke to find her in his tent, their bond was a torrent, raw and unstoppable, and the Voidheart's figure recoiled, its yellow eyes narrowing. No, it roared, but the core's light grew brighter, cracks forming in the figure's form. Lyra's purring became a cry, her body trembling with the effort, and Kai held her tighter, pouring every ounce of his will into their connection. "We've got this," he whispered, his lips brushing her ear, and she nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. The core pulsed one final time, a shockwave erupting that shattered the figure into fragments of shadow, the Voidheart's voice fading into a scream. The chamber stilled, the crystal veins glowing steadily now, their light warm, serene. Kai and Lyra slumped against each other, breathless, their hands still clasped, the core's energy humming softly around them. "Is it over?" Kai asked, his voice hoarse, his arm around her waist as they leaned against the core. The chamber felt different now, lighter, as if Elysara itself had exhaled. Lyra's purring returned, softer but stronger, her body relaxing against his. "The Voidheart's anchor is broken," she said, her voice thick with relief. "Its hold on me, on Zerathia, it's gone." She turned to him, her violet eyes glistening, and cupped his face, her touch gentle but electric. "Because of you, Kai," he grinned, exhaustion mingling with triumph. "Team effort," he said, brushing a strand of her silvery hair behind her pointed ear. "Though I'm pretty sure you did the heavy lifting." She laughed, a sound that warmed the chamber, and leaned in, kissing him softly, deeply. A kiss that spoke of gratitude and something more, a future unwritten. "You gave me your fire," she murmured, her lips lingering against his, "and I'll never forget it." They emerged from the tunnel hours later, the valley bathed in auroras, the crystal veins glowing brighter, as if Elysara celebrated their victory. Kai's comm device beeped, faint signals from his crew finally breaking through the planet's interference. Help was coming, but as he looked at Lyra, her hand in his, he realized he wasn't ready to leave, not yet. "What now?" he asked, his voice soft, the weight of their bond settling into something new, something hopeful. Lyra's smile was radiant, her purring a gentle hum. "Zerathia awaits," she said, gesturing to the horizon, where faint outlines of floating citadels shimmered in the distance. "My people need to know what we've done, and she stepped closer, her body brushing his, her eyes warm with promise. "I want you to see it, to stay." Kai's heart skipped, the idea both thrilling and daunting. "An alien queen asking me to move in, that's a new one." He chuckled, but his hand tightened on hers, his decision clear. "I'm in, Lyra, let's see what this universe has for us." As they walked toward the citadels, the auroras dancing above, Kai felt a sense of home not just in Elysara, but in her. Their bond, forged in a tent under strange stars, had defied a cosmic evil, and now it promised a new adventure. The galaxy was vast, but with Lyra by his side, Kai knew they'd face it together, their fire burning bright against the dark.